And next up, we have our presentation by Matt Capilouto regarding the fentanyl epidemic protecting our community. Mr. Capilouto, will want to come to the stand here? Good evening.
Good evening. Am I good to go? All right, thank you. Mayor Kalfas, council members, and members of the community. 5 years ago, I stood here as a grieving father just weeks after losing my daughter, Alexandra, to fentanyl poisoning. That night, I knew two things. This crisis was deadly serious and urgent action was needed. That remains true today. Fentanyl is still taking lives at an alarming rate. Back then, I wasn't just speaking for Alexandra. I was speaking for Jacob Alexander, age 20, Caleb Dunlap, age 17, Dylan Perez, age 21, and my daughter Alex, age 20, all from Temecula, all lost to fentanyl just days apart in December 2019. And I'd like to acknowledge my good friend and peer, friend of my wife and I, Donna Slusher. She came to support me here tonight. She lost her son, Dylan, 1 week before we lost our daughter, Alex. Fentanyl is now the leading cause of death for Americans age 18 to 45. I want that to sink in for just a moment. Number one cause of death for Americans age 18 to 45. More than car accidents, more than gun violence, more than disease. And these are preventable deaths. Nearly every 7 minutes, someone in this country dies from fentanyl. Yesterday, my wife and I attended the funeral of another young man, a former Great Oak High School student, just 27 years old. Another family shattered, another life stolen, another urgent reminder for action. We must face a hard truth. Just say no is no longer enough. Social media has made drugs more accessible than ever, with dealers preying on young people. Counterfeit pills and laced substances turn experimentation into Russian roulette. Many of us may have experimented in our youth, but today, one bad choice can be fatal. 5 years ago, when my daughter was killed, her death, like all drug-related deaths in Riverside County, was initially ruled non-criminal. But today, because of relentless advocacy and Sheriff Chad Bianco's leadership, every fentanyl-related death is investigated as a potential homicide. Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestrin was the first in the nation to file murder charges against fentanyl dealers, setting a precedent nationwide. Thanks to his leadership, Riverside County is leading the charge to hold dealers accountable. A key part of that accountability is now Alexandra's Law. After years of roadblocks in our state legislature, voters passed it as part of Prop 36. It took effect December 18th, 2024. This law ensures that individuals convicted of drug offenses receive a formal warning. Drugs kill. If your actions lead to someone's death, you can be charged with murder. It's molded after a similar DUI warning that has helped curb drunk driving fatalities. The goal: prevent tragedy before it happens and hold repeat offenders fully accountable when their actions result in death. This law doesn't just target major traffickers. It applies to anyone in the drug trade, whether selling, manufacturing, or even sharing drugs with friends. If a death results, you can be charged with murder. I urge community members to learn about Alexandra's Law by going on our website, AlexandrasLaw.info. The more people who know about Alexandra's Law, the more lives we save. And we must shift the stigma. Too often, fentanyl victims are blamed for their own deaths. Many assume that they chose this fate, but I assure you, my daughter did not choose to die. As a teenager, Alex was diagnosed with what is known as major depressive disorder, which sometimes led to self-destructive choices. 2 days before Christmas in 2019, Alex made the mistake of purchasing what she thought was a prescription painkiller. But it wasn't an evil choice. The evil choice was made by the man who profited off her life, selling her a counterfeit pill made with a lethal dose of fentanyl. His motive was one thing: greed. That's where the stigma should be, not on the victims, but on the predators knowingly poisoning vulnerable people for profit. Selling counterfeit pills packed with fentanyl is not drug dealing. It's murder. So what can Temecula do? To reduce fentanyl deaths in our city, we must focus on 3 key areas. 1, accountability. The Sheriff's Department and District Attorney's Office are committed to prosecuting fentanyl dealers. This enforcement is saving lives. 2, and what I believe is most important, education. We must take responsibility for educating our children before it's too late. A recent study in the American Journal of Drug and Alcohol Abuse found from 2015 to 2023 a staggering 1,194% increase in fentanyl exposure among children under the age of 19. I've spoken at every high school in Temecula, but only during evening events with voluntary attendance. And I'll tell you, the attendance is sparse. This critical education must be prioritized during school hours, not just as an optional after-hours event. It should be an annual requirement until this crisis is no longer an epidemic. Our schools need to provide education that compels students to confront the harsh realities of today's drug landscape because they deserve this knowledge. Third, mental health. Many young people turn to substances to cope with depression, anxiety, trauma. We need stronger mental health support to help kids before they self-medicate. Intervene early and we save lives. I'll conclude with this statistic from our city. From 2019 to October 2024, 104 drug-related deaths were recorded in Temecula, 61 due to fentanyl. And I believe one more victim should be counted. The father of a young victim who, consumed by grief, took his own life. These are not just numbers. They are our sons, our daughters, our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends. We cannot become numb to this crisis. That which we tolerate becomes the norm, but there is nothing normal about losing a child. Alexandra grew up here. She went to school here. She was part of this community. At the time of her death, she was studying social work because her dream was to help others. God knows she's done that now. It's only fitting that this fight continues right here where she lived and loved. I urge this council, champion fentanyl education in our schools. Expand outreach so every family in our city understands the risks. And support mental health initiatives to stop substance abuse before it starts. And I urge every community member to visit AlexandrasLaw.info and share it. Temecula can lead the way. Together we honor Alexandra's legacy and prevent more families from suffering this loss. Thank you.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come up here and speak to us today. I can't even imagine what you've been through with your family and Mrs. Slesser. I can't imagine what you've been through, and I know I speak for all of us when our hearts go out to you. But what you've done since that tragic accident is remarkable, and how much you've fought, not only in Temecula, but at our state level, to get Alexandra's Law involved and into Prop 36, and then Prop 36 ultimately passed, this past December. That's something to be proud of, and it's not easy to do, especially when a tragic thing like that happens to your family, to bounce back and find good out of that negative situation. But I can't. The fentanyl crisis is real, and it's here. And we sit up here and we portray a very beautiful and loving Temecula because it is. But there's also a lot of negative that goes on that our police officers and our sheriffs and our firefighters see every day. And we do our best to hide that and sweep it under the rug, and we put it on the backs of those sheriffs and those firefighters and the families. But there's real stuff that happens like you're talking about today, and we need to fix that. And I completely agree. And I think your presentation would have great benefit in front of the school district as well. And I know you said that you spoke in front of there, but I think the school board would be a great place because education is key. And those are the ones that would be able to implement that sort of education into our school system here in Temecula. But I have one question. You mentioned fentanyl poisoning. And how come you call it fentanyl poisoning rather than an accidental overdose?
Thanks for asking that question. I will never say my daughter died of a drug overdose. And there are actual drug overdoses, and those are tragic themselves. But let me explain what this era of fentanyl and synthetic drugs has done that we never saw until recently. I'm going to read part of what the defendant in my daughter's case pled guilty to. And then you could tell me if that fits the definition of an overdose or does it sound like a poisoning. This is part of the confession he signed. On the night of December 22nd, 2019, Alexandra Capelouto asked defendant if he could sell her Percocet pills, a prescription painkiller. Defendant agreed to sell Alexandra Percocet pills. Defendant drove to Alexandra's home in Temecula, California, and sold her what turned out to be approximately 11 counterfeit oxycodone pills that he later described to law enforcement as blue oxys or M30s. Defendant knew it was illegal for him to sell the pills and that they contained fentanyl or some other federally controlled substance. Upon going to bed the night of December 22nd, 2019, Alexandra Capelouto ingested half of one of the pills. The fentanyl entered her system, poisoning her body, and caused her death. Had Alexandra received an actual Percocet pill, and no parent condones their child purchasing pills illegally, but had it been a Percocet pill, she's alive today. She was poisoned, and that is how so many of our young people are dying.
Thank you for that. I think that needed to be heard. Any of my colleagues have any comments or questions for Mr. Capelouto? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wait, Matt, hold on. Good to see you. Thank you for coming, by the way. I just had a quick question for you. When was the last time, or were you ever able to approach the city council or the school board and present this to them?
Thanks for asking. I recently had a young lady, God bless her, from Great Oak High School, just a freshman, who heard of our story, and this really resonated with her. And she's involved in the ASB there, and she got involved, and she coordinated a meeting with her, myself, her mom, and the vice principal of Great Oak High School. They were excited to actually put together a assembly in front of the entire school. This was maybe about a month and 2 months ago we started planning this. I just got notification a day or two ago that for whatever reasons they can't make it a full school assembly this year. They'll shoot to do that next year, but asked me to go to one of the Saturday classes, where kids go if they've gotten in trouble or have to make up work. So, that's the kind of, those are the challenges we face. People, that's better than nothing, and I'll go speak there and hopefully connect with somebody. But people have to understand also, this isn't just affecting your Saturday school kids who, might have some behavioral issues or something. My daughter was an honor roll student. This can be anybody's kid, from that kid who might be getting in trouble to the most perfect, I know that we're here, the Boy Scout in the country. It's affecting everyone, and our youth deserves this knowledge.
So the reason I bring that up is just recently, over the last few months, I think since about October time, I've been working with staff, number one, to bring education to our city directly about fentanyl, and can we get in the hands of everybody as well, Narcan, and how to use it correctly, because I think it's very vital. Absolutely. The county itself, the state just gives it freely because of the situation that we're in. Businesses, nonprofits are really going to thrive getting this. God forbid somebody shows up and has an overdose, not an overdose, poisoning. I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. But I say this as well because myself and Brendan are on the city school board subcommittee. So I don't know if you'd be willing to go to the school board and maybe see what they can do with it. You have wonderful council, or you have wonderful members there who I'm sure would get behind you. And if there's something that maybe we can do together collaboratively, we can always look at that as well, because we understand the importance of this and the education. So
absolutely,
you have our support 100%.
Thank you. And I want to mention real quick, I was part of a 20-minute documentary filmed a few years ago, made specifically for high school age kids. It's called Dead on Arrival. Any parent community members that have kids going through school right now, I encourage you to go on YouTube, Google Dead on Arrival, put in the word fentanyl so you get the right film. It's only a 20-minute documentary, but that film will resonate, and it will educate our parents and our youth on the dangers of this drug, this very real and deadly drug landscape. Thank you.
Councilmember Schwenk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question for you. I just want to say thank you for coming tonight. Your message is important. You've been to hell and back. Your family's been to hell and back. Many other families have been to hell and back through this. It was an honor to stand with you and many other elected leaders up and down the state. That must have been mid-23, I'm guessing, somewhere in there. It's been a couple years. Yeah. It was really frustrating to see the logjam in the state, right? And I shared this with you before the meeting, this is a simple vote. It's a yes. Yeah. You had 40 some odd co-sponsors on this bill across the political spectrum. For it to get to a proposition and pass overwhelmingly should send a message that this is important, we value this, and just keep fighting, Matt, keep fighting.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Appreciate all of you for the time. Thank you. Now we have work to do.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Moving on to our board and commission reports, we will start off with our community.